Hey, welcome back to another episode of the $1 Million Body Podcast, the intersection of physical and financial success. I'm Nate Palmer. If you're Nate Palmer too. If you're here, it's probably because you're a high performer, an entrepreneur, or a business owner that's interested in maximizing your physique, your finances, and your family time using fitness and nutrition as force multipliers in your life. If you're not already a part of the Facebook group, what are you doing, sweetheart? Come on, figure it out. But go to n8trainingsystems.com/group. That's where we stream these podcast episodes live every Monday. You can join in and ask questions every Tuesday. Sorry. It's just, it's been one of those. Reading is hard. But thankfully, I do take notes on the intro that I've done 100 times. Let's get back to it, though. There's a lot of cool things happening in the group, as well as a massive amount of free resources. So again, go to n8trainingsystems.com/group to join us there. If you're already in the group and watching it live, super excited to have you because today we're going to be talking about the best time of day to eat carbs in order to lose fat. And there is a lot of information about this, and a lot of it is contradictory. So I want to dive into some of it right now, talk about some of the studies, try to keep it pretty light, not go super scientific on it, but end up giving you some really good information as well as some specific strategies you can use starting today. Okay. So jump in, tell us you're excited to be here. If you're in the group, drop us a comment, leave us a question. I'm super excited. And we're going to rock and roll on this. But one of the big things we like to do before we even jump in is give a shout out to the people who are accomplishing big things in the $1 Million Body community. So today I want to give a shout out to Dave. Dave has been working his ass off in the gym. He's crushing it. He's hitting his workouts 3 times per week. They're getting better and better and better. And I got to say, Dave is actually recovering from COVID. He had COVID a couple months ago, and coming back to the gym was really challenging for him. His breath was gone. All this work that he had done, he was like, "Oh man, I'm frustrated. I'm not going to be doing what I need to be doing." Kind of gave up on his eating habits and stuff. But within a couple months, really consistent progress. He's down 25 pounds, and he is doing a great job, just continuing to lose week after week, as well as getting stronger, which is really it's a cool thing to see. Gaining muscle, getting stronger, and dropping fat is awesome. So congratulations, Dave. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for putting in that work. So today, let's talk about carbs, right? Let's talk about carbohydrates, carbohydratos. What are carbohydrates? What's the best time of day to eat them? What's the difference between a banana and Lucky Charms cereal? So many questions we have about carbohydrates. And there are so many people out there just ready to prey on our lack of knowledge, or some of the trendy stuff we see, or just different fads, and sell us something that may not even help us. Okay. So I want you to, number one, I want you to be successful. I want everyone around me in this community to be getting healthier, fitter, and making more money all the time. I'm not a business coach, but I firmly believe that if you are healthy and you are vibrant energy, you're going to make more money, period. End of story. So this is what I really want for you. So I want to make sure to educate you, give you the right answer, so you know what you're looking for, as well as telling you the why. So I'm not just being like, it's probably 4:30 p.m. but Eastern time. That's the time for carbs. So we'll dive into some of the studies and stuff that I read in prep for this. So there's a lot of info out there. Like I said, just a couple of things off the top of my head. Intermittent fasting. It says don't eat at all in the morning. Eat from 12 until 8 p.m. And at that point, go hog wild, no holds barred. Just go off. Go off, sis. Eat it up. So if you want a bagel, you want oysters, you want to eat a sundae, you want to eat whatever, it's fine. It's intermittent fasting. The fasting's the magic, allegedly, right? There's a saying, I don't know if you heard this, but they say eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a peasant. So that's kind of contrary to intermittent fasting, right? So that's one way of looking at it. Atkins says low carb all day. Keto says no carb all day. And honestly, when I go to the store and I look at cottage cheese, my daughter loves eating cottage cheese. I wake up every morning, I go, Renna, what do you want to eat for breakfast? And she goes, cottage cheese and strawberries. And I'm like, girl, I thought I was a little bit weird because I like cottage cheese, but you are in another level. If she could eat cottage cheese and fruit every single day for breakfast, she would 100%. So I go to the store and I see cottage cheese or these other foods that have, 5, 6, 7 grams of carbohydrates, 6, 7, 8 grams of proteins, 5, 6, 7 grams of fats, and they're marked as keto friendly. This makes me mad. And it's not because I hate that the store is like trying to take advantage of a marketing gimmick, but it's because that's not keto friendly. Keto friendly is no carbohydrates. That when you have carbohydrates on a keto diet, you not only get out of ketosis, you actually put yourself at risk for cellular damage. So, okay, like I know this is a little bit of an aside here, but since we are talking about carbs, this is an important thing because keto is the hot shit right now, right? Everybody wants to do keto. Everyone's mom, like Aunt Susan. Aunt Susan just lost 27 pounds on keto in only 3 days. Like, how is she doing it? Well, here's the truth about keto. A this study from Okinawa came out like 3 or 4 months ago, and it showed that if you're having a cheat meal on keto, if you're having some like an amount of carbohydrates, even after a week, 2 weeks, a month on the keto diet where you're like fully ketogenic, if you're having like 75 grams of glucose, which is like a soda, a couple fries, it can lead to damaged blood vessels while on a keto diet because you've essentially trained your body out of being able to process carbohydrates effectively. So when you do have them, it can cause cellular damage to your blood vessels. So just like, if you like keto, great. If you're doing it, great. Probably not the right podcast for you, but I just want you to know that that all these things that sound too good to be true, that sound like the magic pill, are never that way. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is, right? And if you haven't learned that by now in your life, then let me tell you about how it works with health and fitness. But if the more someone promises, the more they're like the bigger the guy's guns on the protein container, the worse that protein is. And that's a pretty soft rule, but I'll take it to the bank pretty much every day. Okay. So keto says no carb. And if you do have carbs, it's going to screw you up if you're going completely ketogenic. And then another study like just came out that said your body is better at burning carbs in the morning, so carbs should be consumed earlier in the day for optimal fat burning. So that's what the study said. And we're going to come back to that because I have a couple of thoughts on that specific study. So so we got a couple of different like trains of thought. Intermittent fasting, no breakfast, carbs whenever. Atkins, low carb all day. Keto, no carbs at all. This one study says carbs in the morning. So which is it? Because you can find science to kind of support all different sides, depending on how you look and which, like if you're cherry picking the data. So what's the best? What's the best time of day to consume carbohydrates? And like this episode, we're not going to really get into like what are the best types of carbohydrates. If you have questions about that and you're watching this live, drop those questions and we'll kind of cover them in the Q&A at the end. Private sesh, super exclusive private session. Kids tickets only $5. So we'll get into that if you want to, but that's kind of beyond the scope of this podcast. So I just basically want to talk about timing. So what's the problem with carbohydrates? Why do we have such an issue with them? Well, so it all goes back to a little study done in the 1970s where some of the grain lobby convinced, we'll say massage. The grain lobby convinced some of these scientists to massage the data saying that, hey, it's not sugars and carbohydrates that are causing issues and obesity. It's these fats. It's these saturated fats. So from the 70s to like the 90s, the US and the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, went on this this low fat rampage where we say so many things that are made with low fat, and how you get fat is like a lot of flavoring. So how do you get more flavor? You add sugar and you add salt. Sugar being obviously a carbohydrate here. So by the way, sugar, honey, date solids, agave nectar, maple syrup, cane sugar, organic date solids. Maybe I said that already. Those are all names for sugar, and those are all 100% carbohydrates. There's no other thing. There's nothing else in sugar or honey or agave nectar besides the carbs. It's pure carbs, okay? Which, not bad. We don't need to villainize them, but just want to keep that in mind. We had a conversation today with a client who I asked, what macronutrient does honey fall into? And we had a discussion about how that's pure carbs. So talking about what to put in your coffee, which I want to do a podcast on that at a later date. So when you're having carbohydrates, now going back. So for a while, we kind of villainized fats. Now coming kind of full circle, like in 2005, 8, somewhere in there, it started to be people started going a little bit more kind of towards that low carb keto diet. Atkins is kind of an older diet, but it started coming back. Keto is really popular in the in the bodybuilding communities in the late 80s and 90s. So that started coming back. Everything is cyclical, right? It's all trends. It's not like nothing's new under the sun. So people started kind of getting wise to like, oh man, sugar isn't everything. Like they even spray your fries with sugar water at McDonald's to make it a more palatable, like, because who wants to eat one McDonald's fry? You want to eat like 17 at a time and be like, man, this is just, my mouth is so full of fries. It's so good. So like everything is done intentionally right there by food scientists who get paid a ton of money to figure out what's the most hyper palatable food that you can eat that's going to not trigger your brain's fullness mechanisms, that chemical leptin that tells you, hey, I'm full, stop it. So how can you eat like 16 ounces of fries before you're like, man, I am actually pretty sick right now? So we started wising up to carbohydrates. And then like, as we get smarter and there's more there's more stuff on the internet and there's more blogs and more articles, more videos, we start this compounds. And suddenly from being like, hey, we should probably avoid some of those processed sugars, people are like, never have carbohydrates. There's some dumb idiot who posted on Twitter the other day, just I think to get a rise out of like diet culture. He said, carbohydrates cause obesity, the end, which is categorically false. But like I've reached this state or a time right now where we're so extreme. Everything has to be all or nothing. So we're kind of on this, like, it's got to be keto. Never have any carbohydrates. You eat a bagel, you're going to go to hell. So these things, that's kind of where we are in like our culture right now. Now with carbohydrates, the problem with carbohydrates is that when you have them, they get used for energy. And right, like that's the problem with carbohydrates, but it's also the awesome thing about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is what I think of as a high impact food. Okay. So if you're like, man, I'm going to go train for a triathlon, I'm going to go running, I need to build some muscle, I'm working outside all day, I have activities, I got stuff to do. Carbohydrates are your friend. I am firmly against snacking. If you've ever like heard me talk about it before, we do not condone snacking as a part of the $1 Million Body Program. I think it's one of like the biggest detrimental things in American like diet culture. And I think it's only going to get worse. Anyways, if you're out hiking and you want a snack, you want to eat like a granola bar, awesome. If you're at a job site and you're digging ditches all day, you want to eat a handful of gummy bears, awesome, to go ahead, because those carbohydrates are going to be used instantly to fuel the work you're doing, to fuel your hike, to fuel the activity. So that's one of the great things about carbohydrates, but it's also a problem for us who are sedentary. You may have said this, you may have heard it from, your dad or your uncle. And he's like, oh man, when I was your age, I could eat 14 hot dogs and drink 2 gallons of beer. And then I hit 35, my metabolism just crashed. So a lot of people say that, but what happens is not that your metabolism crashed or decreased. It decreases at a steady rate, very slow, 0.005%. After you turn 25, your metabolism starts decreasing. Not a big thing. It's like 400 calories per year. Not a big deal. But what happens is we start getting more sedentary. So you keep the carbohydrate intake high, you get more sedentary, and all of a sudden your waistline goes up. That's why between 20s and 30s, people gain 50% of their fat mass on top of that. So like if you're at 20% fat, like statistically, you'll be at 30% fat a decade later in your 30s. So in case you didn't get that, if you start off at 30% body fat at like 25, and that means that in a decade, you have a very, very high probability of being at 45% body fat. So but because our activity level decreases, but our carbohydrate intake doesn't change. So a lot of people go the other direction. No carbohydrates at all, only vegetables, only fats, only bacon, right? So the other problem with carbohydrates that a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to like bringing this up and talking about keto and talking about diet culture is that carbohydrates cost energy to digest. All food does. Fats and proteins and stuff as well. But the carbohydrates can take a little bit longer to digest and can require more blood flow from your brain, from your extremities, your arms and your legs, and can take a little bit longer to in the digestion process, depending on what you ate and how much. Okay. So all that to say is that when you eat carbohydrates, they can actually have a slow down effect in your energy. So that's one of the biggest problems with carbohydrates that I see, because I'm always talking to entrepreneurs. We're talking to business owners. We're talking to people who are taking off hats and putting on hats and just changing their gig all the time, going from writing an email sequence to developing a product to checking with clients and doing some other stuff, and then their family, and then their gym, and then like, so they're always moving around, always changing hats. So there's no time during the day that these people are like, what would be good? It's like a 2-hour lull. No one says that to me. No one's ever said that to me. So the big thing that I think like can honestly separate people from like feeling weird and having like a hard relationship with food and not really eating appropriately and bouncing up and down between different diets, yo-yo dieting, losing weight, gaining weight, is the idea of, rather than chasing weight loss, to chase optimal energy throughout the day. Rather than chasing weight loss, chasing optimal energy throughout the day. And one of the ways they can do that is by avoiding some of those high carbohydrates, really heavy foods when they are very busy, when they have to get something done. And I think this is a extremely underrated tip that most people don't even consider when it comes time to diet, because we're so focused on calories, carbohydrates, macronutrients, vitamins, and minerals that we don't consider like the global implications of how our food impacts our energy, how digestion impacts our energy. So when in 2018, when I came up with the $1 Million Body Method, I was talking to some business owners at the time, and they were like, dude, I don't even care about weight loss right now. I am struggling with my business. I'm in over my head. I'm working 14-hour days. I'm dead crushed. I'm drinking 3 energy drinks. Like, what do I need to eat so I don't feel like a piece of shit? So we came up with a program that gave them energy first. And it was crazy because we started seeing insane fat loss results at the same time. And that's when I knew we were onto something. We had something super special, is because people started losing 25, 28 pounds in 2-3 months, which doesn't sound like a lot, but they weren't trying to lose weight. They weren't trying to lose weight at all. All they were doing is trying to have a ton of energy. So I was like, okay, well, let's dial this in a little bit more. And so that's where the $1 Million Body Method was born from. And at this point in the podcast, I have to hold my book up. So if you're just listening, I am holding my book up. It does say the $1 Million Body Method, and it also says the entrepreneur's diet for superhuman focus and rapid fat loss, because that's what I really believe this is. So let's get into some of the studies, because I do want to, at some point today, tell you what I found to be the optimal time to eat your carbohydrates and also keep burning fat. Okay. So I already shared with you the study that said, hey, your body burns carbs better in the morning. Therefore, it's better to eat carbs in the early part of the day. So that study extrapolated that data and said, therefore, you burn more fat when you eat carbs early, which is not true and not what they measured, and not what they couldn't prove that at all either. So they said since your body is burning more carbohydrates during the day, you are actually burning more fat, which is incorrect, because what's happening in the beginning of the day is when you start eating carbohydrates, your body always gives carbohydrates and food preferential treatment in terms of energy burning. So if I'm going to go out and run and I give myself an hour ahead of time, I have some Gatorade and a banana, I'm going to burn off the Gatorade and the banana on my run. I am not going to be burning off fat because I gave myself plenty of energy, and then I'll burn that off. So the majority of what you're burning is going to be from that, so you'll get some fat burn, especially towards the end of the run, especially depending on how long it is. But if you're like me and you go out running for like 7 minutes, there's no fat burn happening. It's pure red Gatorade. Okay. So when you prioritize carbohydrates in the morning, your body prioritizes burning the food you ate. So yeah, it might be burning more carbs, but it's not doing anything for your fat storage, and it's not doing anything to help you kind of get ahead. You're basically just treadmilling it, right? You're eating and it's working. You're eating and you're eating it and you're expending energy. You're eating it and expending energy. So like you're trapped. It's a hamster wheel. Okay. So this is a fool's errand. This is a sucker's game. We do not want to get trapped on a treadmill in any form, much less a figurative treadmill, because that sounds deadly. So we want to make sure that we are teaching our body how to prioritize burning stored fat, right? Most of us have too much stored fat, period. Like that's just the end of the story, right? And there's not a lot of people walking around being like, what I need is a little bit more fat. And before you be like, hey, my cousin's best friend actually has a disease. I'm like, okay, don't. 95% of people in the US are overweight or obese. So like, I actually don't know if that's totally true. I think it's like 66%, but we have so many people, like 95% of people that I talk to say they want to lose weight. So I'll keep it at that statistic. Okay. Another study came out that said basically they took 58 obese men and they had them follow a low calorie diet with either more carbs at lunch or more carbs at dinner. And they showed that there was really no big difference. Okay. So, but going back to the energy thing, the group that having carbohydrates for their lunch are going to be more sluggish, more reserved, have a little bit of more of a lull in their day in the afternoon. So if the results are really no different from a weight loss perspective in this one study, what I think is we always want to defer to the thing that serves us best from an energy perspective, the thing that serves us best from a focus perspective. Okay. But then again, here's another study, a 6-month study. They did 78 obese adults, so 20 more. So this study is like way more impressive, right? Kind of, maybe. Diet studies are always hard because it's hard to control for what people are actually eating versus reporting. So 78 obese adults were asked to follow a low-calorie diet that involved eating carbs either at dinner or at every meal. The dinner-only group lost more weight, more body fat, and felt fuller than those who ate carbs at every meal. Okay. So you see where I'm kind of going with this is that we want to, like, if all things were equal and you didn't even lose enough body fat and or body weight, but you were still having carbs at every single meal, which was kind of causing these cyclical energy things where you're like, your blood sugar spikes up and you get energy and you get a little bit tired, and your blood sugar spikes up from lunch and you get a little energy, you get a little bit tired. Then we're following, like, we have these curves in our day, these oscillations that can cost us valuable time, mental resources, and energy. So rather than being like, what's the optimal time to have carbs? If in fact there is no optimal time based on science or based on these studies, which I still think there is, then we have to go with what's working best for our focus, what's working best for our day, what's working best with our lives. Okay. So maybe you're the type of person who naps all day. I don't think so, but maybe you are. And you're like, maybe I don't have all my carbs at breakfast, so I can just nap throughout the day. Like, awesome. That's great. Figure out what works for you. Okay. So like this, there's a group of people out there that I think are some of the smartest when it comes to nutrition and diets. I don't think that these guys use a lot of like scientific studies, because I feel like most of the time, what they're going off of is like empirical stuff, what so-and-so said worked, like diet prep, getting like, just kind of like experimentation on themselves. And this is a group of people that I think should be more closely monitored for what they do, especially when it comes to some of these studies. I feel like these people are always like 10, 20 years ahead of the science. And science is always kind of being like, oh, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Wait a second. That works really well. And kind of catching up to what this one group always says. And that group is bodybuilders. Bodybuilders have been so far ahead of the curve on so many things. Bodybuilders are the ones doing like keto, like early 70s and 80s. Bodybuilders are the ones who have done so much for hormones and blood testing. But bodybuilders also have an obsession with being as muscular and as lean as physically possible, or like building, how do you build as much muscle as you can? How do you diet that down so now you look super shredded? So that's their only goal, right? Bodybuilders are not necessarily healthy. I did a photo shoot this Sunday, and the thing I drank, like I didn't drink water from 3 p.m. the previous day till the photo shoot. But I did have a cherry Coke because of the cellular hydration and swelling you get from that simple sugars in there. So like, yes, I looked decent in the photos, but I also was drinking soda right beforehand. And this was my first soda in 13 years. But so it's not like if you have abs, you're definitely healthy, but these guys are always figuring out how to prioritize looking muscular and being lean. So it's really important to like follow success. Success always leaves clues. So whether you want to be a bodybuilder or not, you can always pull something from them. So case in point, like if you think that like, oh, I'm trying this new thing, I'm doing this, like I'm having lemon water with apple cider vinegar, I'm having vitamin D in the mornings, whatever. And you're like super, like I'm a biohacking, right? So there's like a story about this guy who's a bodybuilder, and he worked in a rhesus monkey lab. And there's a specific hormone in monkeys' brains that theoretically could increase your testosterone and growth hormone. Okay. It could help you basically recover from workouts better and grow more muscle faster. And so this guy was actually eating discarded monkey brains in order to obtain perhaps a hormone that allegedly could create more muscle. Okay. And this is already a big dude. So like, it's like, so the reason I'm telling you this story is not saying bodybuilders are super smart. You got to do it. You got to eat monkey brains. But I'm saying is that like, if it exists, if there's a potential for it, if shrink wrap trainers or waist trainers or those electrodes that went on your pecs or your abs or whatever, if those worked, bodybuilders would be doing that shit all the time, and they're not. So you can trust that if there was like a secret way of like building muscle or burning fat, bodybuilders would be doing it before you or I. They'd be way ahead of us. They'd already be like, oh yeah, that's like classic stuff. So that's what I'm saying. This not go eat monkey brains. That's not a good takeaway. So here's like going kind of a little bit more sciencey, talking about how carbohydrates work. Going back to the study about your body burning carbs in the morning and being more effective at burning carbs. So rather than eating carbohydrates when your body is most likely to burn carbohydrates, what we want to do is start thinking about it a little bit differently. We want to, because how do carbohydrates work? We eat carbohydrates, they break down in our body and they turn into glycogen, okay? Basically sugar. So not a ton of difference between like a banana and rice in that way. It's just about how like the speed of the digestion, which we won't really get into. So rather than trying to eat carbohydrates when your body's most likely to burn them off, we want to eat carbohydrates when your body's most likely to store the glycogen in your muscles for energy. So rather than eating carbohydrates when your body's about to burn them off, pre-workout early in the day, we want to eat them when your body has already depleted its glycogen. It's because the way the muscles work is like if every time you do a bicep curl, every time you do a row, a push-up, you use glycogen to fuel that activity. Okay. So glycogen sits in your muscle cells and waits for it to be used and kind of gets burned up as energy there. So what we want to do is we want to be utilizing our current stores of glycogen and then refilling those stores of glycogen after the fact. Okay. So hopefully, like I would write that down if you're taking notes right now, because this is a really important fact. And it's also kind of a little bit backwards of how current diet culture nutritionists look at carbs. So rather than having a time when like your body will either burn through the carbohydrates or even worse, store them as fat, we want to give your body a good reason to utilize those for future energy. So thus the idea of glycogen priming is so important. Okay. So this method only works if you are active. If you are inactive, if you sit all day long and you won't even go on a walk, then this is not going to work for you. This is an impossible task. But if you are active, if you are training, if you are moving for 45 minutes every single day, whether it's a walk, jog, cardio, weights, whatever else, then this is a perfect strategy because it actually creates a snowball effect where you can get leaner, continue to have more and more energy, sleep better. It's amazing. Okay. So this is something that bodybuilders have been doing for a long time. This is something that we use as like a key idea in our $1 Million Body method. And it's something that has gotten insane results in a couple different ways. Number one, fat loss, right? That's what we're looking for. Specifically belly fat, specifically love handles, the harder spots to get to. Number two, energy. We talked about it all the time. If you're eating all day carbohydrates, you're going to have less energy. If you eat at a specific time of day or eat like a little bit later in the day, you will have eaten lighter during the beginning. You'll have more energy during that time. And then third, it enables you to have a nutritional insurance policy so that if you're going out to dinner with clients, you want to eat mac and cheese with your kids. Like if I ended up at Red Robin, I guess I have to eat like the bottomless fries. It gives you the flexibility to have those times without being like, I screwed up. I blew my diet. I've ruined everything. So it's just a great way to have a ton of flexibility, have a lot of energy and burn fat. So it's by far my favorite way of eating carbohydrates is to eat them in the PM. Okay. So that's kind of where I've been getting to with all this stuff is eating carbohydrates in the PM is going to give you all of these benefits: less fat, less love handles, lower ab belly fat, more energy during the day, more freedom and flexibility to eat the foods you want with the people that you love, which is honestly just such a lifestyle gains rather than just a fitness gains thing that I think is really important. So just to kind of reinforce that, our bodies really like using glucose as the first point of contact energy because it's really easy to break down. So if you've got a lot of glucose or glycogen in your system, your body's going to try to utilize that first. But conversely, if you're having in the morning proteins and fats, your body will start to burn the already stored fat because you'll be training your body to utilize the stored energy rather than giving it like a bunch of easy to digest energy. So like rather than, I don't know if you've ever been in a Prius or not, but like rather than like filling up gas and then really hitting the accelerator and using as much gas as you can, if you just go a little bit slower in the beginning, that Prius will pull from battery power before it'll pull from gas, and you'll get a lot higher miles to the gallon. So I don't know if that's completely equivalent, but the bottom line is that when we have carbohydrates in the PM, specifically after workout, after walks, after cardio, and then even just like being around, moving around all day, going out, turning the car, picking kids up, doing something like that, you're going to be moving and using glycogen at all times. So even if you are not super physically active or doing the most, lifting a lot of weights, this is still the best strategy because your body naturally uses glycogen as you go throughout your day to fuel your activities, to fuel your movement, to fuel your walking. So just structuring that so your carbs take place in the evening, generally for dinner, will give you such a better result. It's also awesome because I don't know if you ever had this experience, probably not any of you guys, but I definitely have, where you eat a Thanksgiving dinner or Easter dinner with your family, and then like you go sit on the couch for 4 hours and you don't want to move. Like I've definitely been there, and that's because it's not the tryptophan. Just before you say it, before you think it, not tryptophan. There's more tryptophan in ham than there's turkey. Don't at me, but it's just a huge heavy meal with a lot of carbohydrates. So we get really tired, really sleepy, which is terrible when you're running a business and you need energy for a presentation or a sales call. It is awesome after dinner when you're winding down with your kids and you just want to go on like a little walk, maybe watch some TV show and then go to bed. It is the perfect thing to do in that case because you're already shifting your body back towards what's called parasympathetic nervous system dominance. That's that rest and digest, kind of like chill out mode. So if you have that big meal, not only have you given yourself energy during the day, you've replenished the glycogen stores, you primed your glycogen stores for later, but you've also triggered your body to start slowing down so that way you can get a really great night's rest. So in conclusion, there's a lot of things you could do here, right? There's a lot of voices, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, intermittent fasting, Atkins, keto, paleo, Whole30, so many different varieties of diets, so many different people who are smart and who have great ideas about nutrition saying different things. So it's confusing. And I get that. But what I found is that for high performers, for entrepreneurs, for business owners, for people who wear a ton of hats and move around all the time, are always doing different things and need to be focused during the day, for the people who are not just living for the weekend, if you're a TGIF person, this is not your thing. But if you are driven, passionate, and you have a lot going on that you need energy and focus for, then eating your carbohydrates in the PM is going to be the best move 99% of the time. Like I said, with absolute certainty, not just because of the studies, not just because of the science, not just because of how the body works, but because I've actually seen it. I've seen it with my clients. I've seen it with myself. I've seen it with my family over and over and over and over again until I'm so convinced that this is the right strategy for 99% of people that I gotta stand on a mountaintop and shout about it. I gotta write a book and put it on Amazon. By the way, book's on Amazon if you want to grab it, $1,000bodymethod.com. Guys, thank you so much for checking this out. I really appreciate it. If you have any other questions about your nutrition, your carbohydrates, the protein timing, what should you eat the rest of the day, or just want to chat a little bit, I would love to hear from you. Let me know if there's anything that I can do to make your life easier, help you get in either better shape or make more money. Like I said, I'm not a business coach, but I do know that if you are in incredible shape, you are going to be more fit. And science says you make about 14% more money as someone who's in shape. So if you've got questions, if you got anything else that I can help out with, I'd love to hear from you. Other than that, we'll do that quick VIP Q&A in the $1 Million Body group and at trainingsystems.com/group. And I'll talk to you next week.